I never thought I'd sue an HOA. Never thought anyone would try to charge me for driving on land my family's owned since 1987. But then Vivian Sterling, an Orange County transplant, did exactly that, and my peaceful retirement turned into the most intense property fight I'd ever had. I'm Ezra Blackwood, 45, running Blackwood Brothers Snow and Ice. My family's been clearing these hills for 3 generations, and I've spent my life with diesel in my veins and salt on my boots. My grandfather taught me how to read the land, how to know where the water runs, where frost heaves, and where the snow falls hardest. But here I was standing in the snow engine, still running salt, stinging my eyes. I had just spent 4 hours digging out fire trucks, making sure ambulances could get through, saving lives. And Vivian, with her high heels and designer coat, told me I was fired. We hired Premier Property Services. They were the cheaper bid, more cost-effective, she said, that smirk cutting through the air like a knife. I could barely breathe. 30 years of service clearing the road to save lives tossed aside for a few dollars in savings. She didn't even know how to shovel snow, let alone how to keep people safe in the middle of a storm. It made me sick. Little did she know karma was about to teach her the most expensive lesson of her life. Have you ever dealt with a boss like that? Drop your worst cheap boss story in the comments. Now let me tell you about Millbrook Estates. It's a small community tucked into the hills of Pennsylvania. It's been my bread and butter since 9447 homes nestled together. Dorothy Finch, 83, bakes cookies for us every December, and Harold Martinez, he runs the volunteer fire department out of his kitchen. It's a place where winter is serious business, where we all look out for each other and everyone pitches in when things go wrong. The Kowalski family has been here since the mills ran. Real Pennsylvania folks. Then Vivian Sterling came in. She bought the mill owner's mansion driving a BMW X7, dressed to the nines and thinking she could change everything. She moved here with all her corporate ambition, the kind of woman who manipulates hospital admins into saving pennies while putting people's health at risk. She didn't care about us. Within 6 months, she was on the HOA board, and before long, she was president, promising to modernize things. Her first target: every handshake deal that had kept Millbrook Estates running smoothly. She replaced the old landscaper who'd cut grass for years with a company from 2 counties away. She fired the local handyman even though he'd fixed porches for beer money because he didn't have all the proper contractor licenses. And when old Pete Kowalski, after 4 decades of snow removal, announced he was retiring, Sterling saw her chance. She looked around at the HOA meeting and said, "We need to modernize our winter services." And there it was, the beginning of the end. She started talking about professional standards, comprehensive liability coverage, competitive bidding processes. Meanwhile, I was in the back of the room slouching in my steel-toed boots, still caked with mud from checking my equipment. She didn't know the first thing about what it meant to clear a road when lives were on the line. My bid, $8,500 for the season, the same price I'd charged for 30 years. And it worked. We were the ones who kept people safe during winter's worst. But Premier Property Services, they came in at $6,200. Marcus Webb, their owner, drove down from Lancaster County, promised state-of-the-art equipment and digital service tracking. His trucks were shiny, his crew in new uniforms. But when I looked at them, I saw the problem. They weren't prepared for what we deal with up here. They were slick, but they didn't know the snow, the ice, the dangers of a real Pennsylvania winter. When the vote came down, it was 4-3. Sterling's coalition won, and I was out. She had signed our death sentence. You can't just buy cheap equipment and expect it to do what my family's been doing for years. When winter hits, you need people who've been through it, who understand the risks, who know how to keep the road clear for the elderly and the sick, not someone who's just looking to make a quick buck. November came, and Millbrook Estates was buried under 6 inches of snow. Calls started coming in, not from Sterling, but from the neighbors. Ezra, Dorothy Finch. I hate to bother you, but our driveway's still buried and Harold's got dialysis at 10 o'clock and we can't get out. You can imagine the bitter taste in my mouth. Sterling had chosen the cheaper contractor and now it was costing lives. By noon, Premier showed up. 2 trucks that looked like they'd been rescued from a junkyard, driven by kids who had no clue what they were doing. They missed entire cul-de-sacs. The Kowalski Circle home to elderly couples sat buried for 18 hours. Harold's driveway scraped halfway and left like that with 2 inches of ice packed down. Dorothy Finch's walkway completely abandoned. I went over to Dorothy's, found her lying on the ground, her wrist swollen and purple. She'd slipped on the ice that Premier had missed. I didn't blame Dorothy, but I could see what was happening. I started taking pictures. The work was garbage salt dumped in patches, plow marks that left half the street blocked. I started building my case. It was clear to me Sterling's cheap choice wasn't just incompetent, it was dangerous. I kept digging, and that's when I found it. Playground sand, not road salt. Sand that did nothing but make their work look professional, while it failed miserably. Using sand instead of road salt wasn't just lazy, it was illegal. I pulled Premier's business registration, found they weren't licensed to do winter services. That was the final straw. Sterling didn't just make a mistake, she opened up her whole community to liability, and she was going to pay for it. By December, things got worse. Premier abandoned us during a blizzard, and that was when I decided enough was enough. I filed complaints with the county, documented everything, and started building my case. I wasn't just going to sue, I was going to make Sterling pay for every single disaster she caused. I'd spent 30 years protecting this community, and now I was going to protect it in a new way. I'd watch as her empire crumbled. I gathered all the evidence I could, photos, emails, documents. By the time January hit, Sterling's worst nightmare was on its way. The storm was coming, and Premier Property Services would fold. And when they did, I'd be there ready to fix the mess they'd left behind. And when it hit, oh did it hit! The storm of the century. The National Weather Service was predicting 3 to 4 feet of snow, 50 miles per hour winds. I had everything ready. My trucks were positioned, my crew on standby. Premier's equipment was already breaking down, and when their trucks died, I was ready to step in and do the job right. The difference between professional snow removal and whatever the hell Premier had been pretending to do was about to become clear. By Sunday afternoon, Premier was gone. Their trucks were stuck abandoned like the garbage they were. Meanwhile, my crew cleared every driveway, every access route, and restored order to the chaos they had left behind. Sterling's house. Her driveway was pristine, maintained by a private contractor she had hired to take care of her own winter wonderland while everyone else was left in the cold. Monday morning, the HOA meeting. The community center was packed. Sterling tried to spin the disaster as something she couldn't control. But when Dorothy Finch stood up, broken wrist still in a cast, and asked, "How do you explain this?" the whole room knew exactly who was to blame. The truth came out. Her scheme, her fraud, all of it. Sterling was arrested, the HOA board voted to remove her, and the community had finally had enough. I got my contract back, and not just that, my business grew. We expanded, hired more people, and even started a memorial fund for veterans and elderly folks who couldn't afford snow removal. We were doing things the right way, and the community was stronger than ever. Sterling's mansion was sold, and the new owner's regular people joined the community just like it should have been from the start. The new HOA was run by Dorothy Finch, a woman who knew what community meant, not some corporate shark looking to profit off of other people's misery. In the end, justice was served. But here's the thing. You never know who's watching, and sometimes the worst mistakes come from thinking you can walk all over people who've been through harder winters than you've ever faced.